curious. There. She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called Curious.
Conversation.
Curious.
Conversation.
Nowadays, there are still girls and boys.
Welcome, everybody. We're doing this on Curious Conversations, but this is sort of the Oblivion subgenre, sub-label, going down into a new area of Curious Conversations. This is maybe episode 19. I don't know. All the formalities don't really matter to me. But what is really great, what does matter is it's Vic and I coming together as a part of Oblivion. And then we've got two special guests, really fucking special guests. As I was mentioning to them just before we hit record, is over this year, last year, anytime, any conversations around Web3, crypto, NFTs, metaverse, decentralization, etc., these are the two names that have come up the most in my field and that I've been watching over. One is a dear friend and one is a new one. And yeah, I'd just love to introduce you both and let you both sort of share who you are and why you feel like you're here and important to the conversation. So I'm going to start off with Atlas Talisman. If you'd love to share a little bit about yourself and your journey into this Web3 world.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my background is really in physical theatre. I've been clowning pretty much my whole life, studying commedia dell'arte, which is Italian mask work, back in Johannesburg Youth Theatre. And then I got really into improvisation in Australia with ATYP, Australian Theatre for Young People, Actors College for Theatre and Television, So basically that kind of improv, spontaneous clowning. And for me, that space is actually quite a spiritual space because you're tapping into flow, source, the moment, all these Zen kind of practices. And that led me into this fascination with immersive theatre because I wanted to always dissolve the boundaries between things or the understood kind of parameters that things had to operate in, which, you know, probably you can probably start to hear the idea of decentralization coming in. But that led me into various different degrees around communication design, around professional game development, around coding, around interactive spaces. So bringing the possibility of interplay and interactive media into a physical space, aka IRL, in real life. And I've just done a bunch of techie geeky things. I've started up a startup in Australia called Penguin Wolf, and that led to things like an app for Sydney Children's Hospital and different websites and apps and things like that, games. And then I was a creative director for Townsville Cultural Festival. Then I started New Kind Festival. And with New Kind, we wanted to have this alternate reality game. So when you arrived at the front gate, and Paisley, you're part of the welcoming committee.
And that's how my name became Paisley, actually, through that game.
Amazing. Still, the game still goes strong. Yeah. So you claimed your new identity at the gate. You got a lanyard, which had an RFID tag, so radio frequency identifier. And then when you attended a workshop, your character would kind of level up. And so, yeah, for a long time, it's been on the periphery of my awareness that there is this nexus point for all these things. For me, it's art, technology, and culture. And then the finance part actually is just a later thing, which now I'm into simply because of crypto and Web3 and NFTs. But that was really the background as to how I got involved. And then a dear friend of mine, Kevin Mendoza, he started the Crypto Collective, and I started helping out more from the game design because I'm a game designer. I've worked on a few video games / in real life games, hybrids, like Civilization Explorer, based in Austin. And another one, which was a socially driven project called Loving Eats in the food justice sector. And so when I came across Crypto Collective, I could bring that, even though I was totally a noob as far as trading and the financial part goes, I could bring my experience in community building and gamification. So that brings me to this present moment. I won't, there's plenty more details in between, but basically got involved with the Crypto Collective, and that led me to now working at SyncDAO, so decentralized autonomous organization, which we can talk all about. I think it's the future of all kind of corporate life, which is really exciting. And strangely enough, I work in fintech now, financial technology. How bizarre that my parents used to joke when I was a kid, like, oh, too bad you couldn't have been an accountant. And I'm like pretty much like Web3 accountant. So it's pretty strange. But yeah, I'm what they would call a GameFi designer. So I bring a gamification layer to the financial investment around our perpetual vault system. And assisting with projects like Oblivion and a bunch of other ones as well, bringing people who are early adopters, innovators, rebels, and that's actually really intrinsic to Web3 culture. It comes from cypherpunk ideology around sovereignty and freedom and decentralization and equality and equal access, and I think that because money's involved, it's potentially the most significant engine after communication, which was brought about by the internet. Now we've got money brought about by crypto. And just like everyone began to talk to each other, change the world, everybody being able to pay each other or trade funds or resources is going to absolutely be, I think, the pivotal thing. So DeFi, let's talk a bit about that. That will actually shift the old patriarchal, hierarchical system and totally open up economies in a whole new way.
What an intro. Is this? I feel like we could end the podcast there and someone would just get something from that. Oh, cool. Look, I've learned something today. Whoever the other guest was, I guess I'll catch them next time. But then there's more. So yeah, I would love for you, Ben Slater, someone that's new to me, for you to introduce yourself. So maybe even I will learn something here as well. So yeah, take the floor.
For sure. Yeah, well, look, my intro into cryptocurrency, I actually owned Bitcoin back in 2010, I believe, and I was using it to purchase drugs on the internet. I was on Silk Road, and I was addicted to drugs. So I used it for destroying myself, essentially. And I'm on this like arc. It's really interesting because I turned 30 yesterday, and I sat down with my parents and I said, what are you most proud of? And I looked back in the decade and I was like, you know what? I'm most proud of turning my fucking life around, because when I was 20, I was addicted to drugs. I was suffering from psychosis massively. Like I was fucking off the edge of life. Like I could barely go outside because I just pushed it so hard with drugs that I was like, kind of like in the unconscious, hallucinating almost every day. Having some very strange experiences, let's say. And it took me a few years, but I found that there was this great learning in all of that. Like there was this great spiritual kind of undertone. Like I kind of lost myself in the unconscious world for a couple of years there. And so that was what, 8 years ago. And I remember, so I was hanging out with a bunch of friends at that time, and I came home and I actually deleted everyone's phone numbers from my phone because they were going down a path, and I just decided in that moment, like, I can't keep going there. One of my friends actually died when he was on drugs. And I just thought, yeah, it was a real dark time. And I thought, nah. So I just left. And I actually started a business at that time. And the past 8 years for me has been just business. I had a lot of traumas, like financial traumas when I was growing up, and that kind of just piqued me onto that at that moment. So just put down the drugs, put all the energy that I had into business, and look, I did pretty well. Like my brother and I started a business, and we just morphed and changes and adapted that through time. And now, about 10 years later, I picked back up on the cryptocurrencies, and I've been able to do really well for myself. I built a 7-figure business when I was about 23, rolled that all the way through to my 29th birth, well, around 29, and then just found cryptocurrencies again from a place of empowerment. And I thought, wait a minute, there's something here. And I picked it up, and yeah, that leads me to NFTs, and I can go down all these different rabbit holes and stuff, but that probably gives you guys a bit of an essence as to like where I'm coming from, in a sense of like the void, let's say, and finding cryptocurrency back then, using it to destroy myself, and now finding it and wanting to use it to build myself and build others, and yeah, build communities. And yeah, and not that I'm against drugs. I learned some great things there, but I certainly don't take drugs today unless they're mushrooms.
Perfect. Yeah.
Epic. Yeah, what a hero's journey around, and like how that can also be tied into cryptocurrency, and just some stuff that I'm sure we will get into around. We are all here to talk about some winning stories that we have, but there's also shadows to a lot of this work, and what's available in the space is something that we're going to have a lot of integrity around to make sure we don't dip into those darker places. So yeah, thank you for bringing that element in as well.
Yeah, I'd
And
also
Vic, I would
actually,
love,
oh,
for
you
you
go.
to have a little share. Just no, yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
saying to bring your voice in.
I actually had a curiosity as well with you, Ben, a little bit about your personal development background as well, like coaching, because that's actually one of the
Yeah.
things that really drew me to you, because when you started talking about NFTs, I was like, oh, this guy speaks coach. That's my language, you know? So it was really palatable for me when you started talking about it.
Yeah, well, I was really blessed because like right around the time that I decided to make a shift in my life, I had this mentor come in, amazing guy, literally saved my life. Like he kind of like I always imagined that I was kind of like drowning at that time. And this guy just came along in his boat, threw me a life raft, and I was like, hey Ben, like come and get in, sort of thing. He was old, he was like 50, very, very wealthy, owned all these businesses, was a spiritual guy, was just healthy, was just like empowered on everything. And he mentored me for free, took me under his wing for 3 months. I was heavily medicated when I started working with him. After 3 months, medication was in the bin. I'd started my first business. I'd realized my passion in life. I'd quit university with one subject left to go. And I turned back around and I looked at it and I said, wow, that's maybe the most valuable thing in the world, passing the torch to someone. And I always go back and I ask myself, like, did I even really deserve that? And it just lit this fire in me for personal development. And it's a fire that will never be extinguished. And I really believe it's a mission of my life to find people in a similar position to me and just keep passing that, like just pass that torch, because yeah, like what else is there, you know? So yeah, that's definitely like my fire, where I come from. And yeah, thanks Vic for pulling me up on that, because I can get a bit ungrounded sometimes when I talk about my past. So thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of goosebumps as you're sharing your story for that. It's very powerful.
Yeah, thanks.
So there's so many areas and avenues that we can tendril down, and I feel like what is exciting for me to talk about now is the community element that we can see here, you know, like Atlas being someone that is creating community and has been a community creator for so long, and then Ben in the work of coaching, I'm sure you've had so many communities through there, and then in the circle, that it is such a beautiful community, and the process of, I guess, onboarding people, and like how you feel like you are bringing the message over to go, oh, okay, like it makes sense, because a lot of it is just, it takes a while for it to make sense. I remember one day last year, I like called Atlas. I was like, just tell me about NFTs, you know, like I don't understand, but it feels like I should understand. I can see there's alignment, and like to me, there's constantly been this experience, and the more hours I put in, it's easier. But when people explain it to me, even when Atlas, I was like, okay, pause, I'm dissociating, I'm out of my body, it's too much. And how I experience this is like, oh my god, like this aligns, and I think it's the sort of the infinite possibility that's built around NFTs and crypto and Web3 is like, it then goes way too beyond like even me. Like I go down these, oh, it could do this, and then I guess like, I go all the way up into my head and my third eye, and then go out of my body, and it's like, oh, okay, cool, like stop talking about it now, like no more. I'm curious about, just for the both of you and whoever feels to share, just how you are starting to bring this conversation to people that are just curious but have a long way to go. They feel like they have a long way to go before they can adopt the technology. just popcorn style, whoever feels to share on that.
I can jump in. There's a few different ways I'd approach it. I think the initial thing that I would lead with is story, because we understand things through analogy. When you look at learning styles, the Smithsonian Museum have this method called IPOP, which is ideas, people, object, and physical things. So it's like, how do people take things in? How do they connect? And the first two, ideas and people, is a great way to go in. The objective one is more about the physical beauty, the visual aid, the map, understanding from an objective perspective, but that can be too technical. So if you start with a cool concept, like, hey, we're all going to share, we're going to build it together. There's no more boss, there's no more gatekeeper, all that kind of thing. That sort of makes sense of decentralization. And then just the human stories like yours, Ben, it hits the heart. Or, for example, Axie Infinity, seeing how it's changing the economy in the Philippines. Like, when we care about the humans, we go, cool, even if I'm not really like a technophile, if I don't, even believe in technology, I believe in people. And then that's kind of the area that I'd start with. And there's another area I'll talk about to do with the technology and how to simplify it down. But yeah, I'll just put a pause in it for there to make space.
Nice. Yeah, I think for me, I've approached it more from the investment side, obviously. Like, I run The Circle, which is a community which is about investment. But it's funny, it's like, you can't separate investment from the personal development stuff. So it is, for me, about, okay, there's this great financial opportunity here, which I think is a big reason why we're also interested in it. But I think the financial opportunity is actually coming from the excitement that people have with Web3 and the possibilities. Like you were saying, Paisley, like, sometimes I go down these rabbit holes too, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to start a DAO, and like, oh, I'm going to be able to do this and this. And it's like, it's amazing. Like, the possibilities are amazing. But, I guess for everyone, just to ground this in some numbers and things like that, like, we've got a community of people that have never really studied investment before. They've never really gone down that rabbit hole, and some of them have made like hundreds of thousands of dollars by doing this, and it's just so empowering to see people winning. The Web3, for me, like, there's this comment like, we're all gonna make it. Now, is that 100% accurate? Probably. Let's be real, like, not everyone is going to come into Web3 and just crush it, but there is this beautiful energy of, if I'm winning, you're winning. And if we're winning, there's this shared, like, it's not like a typical financial market in a sense, because let's say I go and buy an NFT and I call up Atlas. And I'm like, hey, Atlas, I got this really cool NFT. Like, here's the reasons why it's cool. Then you come in and buy it too. It's not like a regular business or something where you want to kind of keep your secrets like over here. Because if you're coming in, it doesn't benefit. It actually benefits, right? Because it increases the value. So there's a community aspect, there's a value around freedom, and we can all make money at the same time. So that's where I'm kind of hitting it. And it very similar to what Atlas was saying before, is like a cross section of all these things, like things I love personally, of like personal development, learning, business, finance. All of those things are crossing together, and it's changing the economy. It's changing the way that we as consumers own the data, own the narrative. It's super exciting. And I just really encourage everyone, like, if you haven't yet taken that jump, just to really immerse yourself into space. And what I'm saying is, spend 1 hour a day studying crypto and NFTs over a year. And I think just that one thing, spend 1 hour a day doing it, and just be led to whatever path it is for you. 1 hour a day over a space of 365 days, you'll be in the top 1% of your understanding of crypto and NFTs. And I think that's really the answer, is to education at the end of the day.
I'm just laughing. You go.
Maybe talk and just share the day-to-day tools, because I think that's an awesome point. Like, expose yourself to it, share it for one hour a day. And if I'm just putting myself in the shoes of a learner who's watching this podcast, but like, cool, how do I do that? So I thought maybe I could forward a few ways that I would do that each day, and then maybe I'd love to hear sort of your approach as well.
Yeah, sure.
So for me, the economy is really like the vital sign of the culture. things go up and down, and it feels very sort of, green and red, feels very mathematical, but it's really just like, are people here or are they not? Is there activity or is it going quiet? And also oscillation is healthy. It's a sign of change. So, I don't think things have to be only up. But I just expose myself to charts, and I'm not particularly mathematical. I'm much more artistically oriented. I do like technology, but I'd do something like going to TradingView, which you can just get a free account with, and just add a few markets to watch. I guess one of the things to understand is that value is comparative, by which I mean there's two things which are having a relative value towards each other. So for example, a lot of things are pegged to the US dollar. And so you might do a pair that's like DOT to USD, or there's this thing called a stable coin, which is essentially the same value as an American dollar. So it's just the relative value compared to that. Increasingly, as people are moving more into crypto, we're wanting to kind of leave fiat currency, which is like government issued currency, aside, so not always comparing it to the dollar, because that's, hyperinflationary currency, so its value is going down. So it's a bit of a weird thing to think of as stable. So instead, it could be something else, whether it be Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it is. Point being, you get these two things and you see which is going up compared to the other one. And even if you don't know what that means, there is this literacy that comes through exposure that I've found. So just looking at the charts, also going to something like IC Tools or Rarity or cryptoslam.io. Like there's a few different websites you can go and just see what's rising, what's cool, what's not, And so I'm not necessarily saying any particular technique other than show up to these places and look. I think that's a key thing. The second thing I do is definitely get yourself a Twitter account. You're part of Oblivion as well. I've just spent hours and hours scrolling through and getting these long lists of key people that I think would be good to start with. And then from there, because it's community, who do they follow? And you just sort of expose yourself and go into Twitter spaces. I think that's a really cool thing. And then just, there's some really good aggregate YouTube channels as well that you can just go and get kind of the top line of what's happening. And then maybe finally something like CoinMarketCal, which is like a calendar, which shows you all of the next releases that are happening. And it's like once again, a top line of what's happening in the industry. So I think that way it might splash and just gently start to absorb what's going on.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, for me, it was YouTube, actually. That's how I really got started. The one specific channel is a guy called JRNY Crypto. He's really, really great on the crypto side. Pretty much everything I learned actually on the crypto side was from him. And the whole reason that I got into NFTs, actually, I saw him in May. There was like a big market dip in May. It dropped like 40% in one day. And I was in Santorini in Greece, living there. And I had the worst week of my life in this beautiful place. And I was like, shit, what am I going to do about this? I don't want to experience that again, sort of thing. My wealth literally dropped by 40% in one day. And I was watching his videos, this guy on YouTube, JRNY Crypto. And he bought about 100 Bored Apes in May. And every week he would come back and he would say, oh, I bought these things, like they're going really well. They're going really well. And I just started watching it. And he invested $45,000. That $45,000 is over $200 million today. And he hasn't sold one of them. And that's within 8 months. So that was actually because every week it was just going up and up and up and up and up. And I just said, NFTs, NFTs, NFTs. So one thing as well, look, the best platform right now is a thing called OpenSea.io. So it would be worthwhile. So the two things that you want to have with NFTs is you want to have a MetaMask. So that's MetaMask, METAMASK.io. And that gives you the ability, it's almost like your internet money wallet. And it lives in your Google Chrome. And you just got it there and you can click a button and it's going to open up your wallet. You can have your coins in there. And that's going to interface with OpenSea or with some other platforms that are now being built. And you're going to be able to essentially buy your NFTs. And the really cool thing about Web3 that's quite powerful, and this is what's probably different from like a Facebook or something, because with Facebook, I've built an audience. I've got my friends on there, and I've built all this stuff. But at the end of the day, let's say Facebook, and my story is that I invested heaps of money into advertising in Facebook, and I got banned off the platform for no real reason. They were like, nah, Ben, we don't like this. Like, yeah. And I'm sure this happens a lot in the
This is
communities.
how Oblivion came upon for us is
Yeah.
so we all ended up getting banned. I created a tile that goes my existence goes against our community guidelines. Hundreds of people posted it
Yeah.
as well, and then we're like, oh, like we need to go somewhere else. Let's start, and then that's where we're like, okay, cool, let's create Oblivion. Gets on board
Yes.
everyone to
And I
Web
think
3.
Oh, 100%. And it does, that is one of the biggest problems. Like for me in my business, I realized that I didn't actually own my business, because here I was building this skill set, building this audience, doing all this stuff, and Facebook just goes like, nah, bang, slap. And I was like, fuck, my income is going to go down massively, like all these things. And funnily enough, I looked around and I said, okay, what's the solution? And I knew it was crypto. I didn't know it was NFTs, but I knew it was crypto. So I just like went down that kind of rabbit hole. And to kind of loop this back into what I was saying before, you've got OpenSea, right, which is a platform. But the difference between Web3 and Facebook Web2 land is that they don't own my data. So MetaMask actually, and which is a centralized wallet, but my NFTs actually live inside my wallet. And the platform then aggregates and pulls that data in. And something really interesting has happened this week, which will give you guys a bit of an insight into how crazy the space is. So there's some very wealthy collectors on Twitter, and Atlas has a great piece of advice. I think Twitter is the main thing that you want to have, like really just follow the main people. So you could go to Atlas's his profile and look at everyone he follows and just follow the same people, because you're going to have the same news that he has. Similar with me, you can go and do that with me and you're going to have the same news that I have. So really wealthy collector in the space got pissed off at OpenSea. He's like, oh, they're annoying me. They're not leading. They're not doing things correctly. So he got together with some people, built a new platform. It's called looksrare.org. He literally looked at all the people that used OpenSea, airdropped them tokens, literally like gave them shares in the business. I received 2 days ago about a $20,000 airdrop. Literally just like, hey, here you go. Here's $20,000 of shares of our new company that didn't exist 1 month ago, and have built a platform that pulls in all my NFTs. And now this keeps companies accountable, because let's say Facebook, they can say, no, go off my platform. But imagine if you could take your audience with you. Imagine if you could take all the shit that you'd built and go, all right, well, fuck you, Facebook. I'm over here with my stuff. This is something that excites me about Web3. So I just did want to mention that, of like, it's just an interesting like anecdote as to what's being built in the space.
It's a very, very important to our audience. That's literally our whole audience. People are signing up to our program just because they're sick of Facebook and Instagram, and because they're all, a lot of them are working in the sexuality industry and like in personal development, and want to speak about things that are maybe not as like mainstream. That means they keep getting banned and their businesses are getting shut down and money's taken away. So like, yeah, I think everyone's going to really relate to what you've just shared. I feel like Atlas
I'd like to talk about Web3 and how that relates to crypto, because I think that someone using Web2 as in just the centralized platforms where all of our data is held by a particular company and therefore they can gatekeep it. How does that relate to like a money coin going up and down and things like that? So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the technology actually underlies these coins. So one coin is not like another. That's a whole different part of an industry. So that might make a little bit more sense about how we're actually going to use this as a type of internet. So different coins, you've got something called a layer 1, which is essentially like an operating system. It's like having, Windows or Apple OS or whatever it is. And so on that particular, you could call it platform, or it's really just more like a code base, you can then program applications like WhatsApp or like whatever, Facebook Messenger. These are applications based on an underlying layer 1. So those are big things that you would have heard of, like Ethereum, like Polkadot, Cardano, Terra, Luna, for example. So that is how it's going to be replaced, is that you've got a particular technology which essentially says now you can come and build all the applications that you used to build over there, whether it be like YouTube, there's like DLive, or there's Theta Network. There's lots of different ways that we can host videos. So if you like that particular functionality, you can buy a coin that relates to that ecosystem. A lot of people think of it like a speculative play where it's just like a stock in the company, but it's not really that. The different coins, for example, maybe a currency. I think in DLive, you can pay for content using the currency. So it actually flows inside that internal ecosystem. Or you can have what's called a governance token. And this gets really important when people are running DAOs or decentralized organizations, because then you get a chance to have a voice at the table voting how these things should go. Also, there's this idea of environmentalism, like is Bitcoin bad for the environment? And I think it's a really important conversation topic, particularly in our kind of communities where we do worry about that sort of thing and want to not aid something that's going to be destructive simply for personal benefit. But that really comes down to the type of consensus mechanism, by which I mean, how do we as a group decide what's being validated as a proper transaction, and how can we vote as to how our community can move forward? That's what I mean by consensus. We agreed together. And so moving away from what's called proof of work, that's what Bitcoin and Ethereum are currently based on, that solves a lot of the environmental problems. Because the environmental problem comes about because you need all of these big stacks of computers to work out this hash, work out this particular mathematical problem. And there's actually no intrinsic link between working the math problem out and validating on the ledger. So that's all that something like Bitcoin is. It's an open spreadsheet that says, yep, Atlas transferred $5 to Ben. Like that's all it's doing. So why all the complicated maths? It's simply showing that you've actually it's so that not everyone can do it. And you've got to actually invest time in the hardware to work this out. And then you have other people in the network going, yep, cool, Ben worked out this mathematical thing and it's correct. It's accurate that he did that, and then he can mine and receive the Bitcoin, and then say, yes, that now is validated. It's gone onto the chain, which means that it's actually been added as data to the spreadsheet, and then it's got locked off as a block of data and added to a chain, aka the blockchain. So that maths now can actually be put aside when we can do something else like called proof of stake or proof of burn, proof of, I think it's time. There's lots of different proofs. So as soon as we move
Atlas,
away,
I'm going to pause you.
yeah,
I'm a bit bamboozled by a lot of me as a new listener right now. Proof of stake,
okay, cool.
proof of this, like I'm getting a bit
I
bamboozled. If you
Cool.
want to just like break it down a little bit more.
I'll slow it down. The reason, and thanks for bearing with me on the tech geek shit, but I think it's so important because this one topic of Bitcoin being bad for the environment can steer so many well-meaning people away. And I just really want to take time with it. So I'll try and make it even simpler. When we're doing a transaction, the way that it goes on the blockchain is it gets verified as that did happen. And therefore it can't be taken away. It can't be denied. It's what's called a trustless system, which sounds bad, but it's actually a good thing. It means that you don't have to have credentials. I don't have to know your identity. It just is validated. Yep, this did happen. And therefore it's undeniable and everyone can validate it because it's open source. Everyone can see that sort of happened. So instead of having a industrious computer bank validating, we simply say, if you have a lot of the token, you can validate. And it's a bit like a political system where it's like, I will give you my tokens and you can stake them, mean it's like commit them to a particular pool, and you can therefore decide which way our company goes. So it's really about how we vote on how we're going to do this and how we validate the transactions between each other. That's all it really comes down to. So I guess in summary, I'm saying that the electricity bill can be reduced when we no longer rely on mathematical equations to validate a transaction on the blockchain. And so coming back to my point about how does technology relate to crypto, that's only one type of technology. Another type of technology might be like, how do we all hold our video content? Like if you upload a video to YouTube, where does it go? Well, it goes to Google's server. So instead, we do what's called a distributed network. We slice it up like the video or whatever the data is, and everyone who's using the service actually holds the service. Anyone who's done like BitTorrent or like shared files back in the day, it's the same premise where it's like Paisley uploads, his embodiment, rewilding grave video. And if I'm watching it, I'm actually holding a piece of it. And if Vic wants to watch it, I actually serve her part of the video. And so that's kind of how we start to decentralize, and it can't be censored, because you can crash my computer, but then Vic is passing it on to the next person. So I guess what I'm saying is, when you're buying a coin, you're actually buying a utility. You're buying part of the company, but you're also stepping in to help the company run. And if you're someone like me that really wants to get in amongst the engine, like holding a node means you actually hold part of the network, and you can start to make actually a lot more money passively than even trading or that sort of thing on the coin, because you're helping the actual underlying network. So yeah, I'll stop it there, but hopefully that makes sense, that proof of work is only one way to validate, and that's actually becoming antiquated. Ethereum is moving away from that this very year. And secondly, when you're buying a coin, you're not just buying money, you're buying a function in the business. So just really pick the area of the industry of Web 2 that you're passionate about, and find the correlation in Web 3.
Yeah, a lot of important information there. And that's like, all of that speaks to my soul. And at the same time, this is around the, like, you know, when I've had these conversations in my early times, and I'm still early here, is like, this infinite possibilities is like, it's beyond my conscious ability to hold that information. It's like, now I'm overwhelmed by, like, my reality is shifting too quickly. It's as if, like, you know, you're on some kind of plant medicine, and then your whole reality just gets shattered. And it's like, after you do the plant medicine, sometimes, you know, in my experience, is like, all that wild philosophy that I was so tapped into is sort of gone now. Where did that go? Because it's so overstimulating. And I feel like that's an important piece that I'd love, Vic, for you just to speak about, is bringing back into the body when journeying all of this amazing technology, and aligning with this philosophy that we all have happened to be a part of within personal development and within arts and theater, and just wanting to decentralize. And all of us have somewhat of a system of, like, fuck the system background, you know, that we've evolved a bit more over our personal development time, but how we're bringing that back to the body, and what your practices are there, Vic.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my journey with this has been, I've had an interest in this stuff for maybe a couple of years, and it took me, in the beginning, I had a mentor, and I just wanted to invest straight away. I was like, look, just get me in the game. I just don't understand any of this. So I just want to give you some money so that I can just, like, immerse myself in this reality, because it's just, I have this understanding of almost like, this is never going to make sense. And when I've explained it to people, it feels like, you know, if this is like all the way open, like I'm opening my hands all the way for those that are just listening, I feel like this reality that we're talking about is not even, like, the lid is just cracked open right now. That's where it's at in, like, the, you know, when people want to try to understand this, they're like, I want to know everything about this. I want to get to the end point so that I can see where this is taking me. And my piece for those people that are in that, it's like, actually, we really need to come back to our relationship to the unknown and to the mystery, which is really the crossover that I see for our cultures of, like, you know, a lot about the work in sexuality is not to figure out where, you know, what sex is going to look like when we're in there. It's actually about, like, letting go to the mystery of how sex wants to unfold in any given moment. And being sexually integrated is not like, okay, when I'm sexually integrated, I have sex like this, and this is how I know I'm good at it, you know? It's actually about fully letting go to not knowing what it's going to look like, and finding yourself in your value systems aligned to that. And I think what's beautiful about this conversation that we've had so far is that we're really speaking to what I've been journeying with a lot of people that are talking to me about Web3. It's like, they're almost like questioning me, like, yeah, but what are you going to do about this? Like, I'm a politician pushing this or something. And I'm just like, it's not my reality. You know, it's just like, there's a lot of people are feeling a lot of their values are being met in this space, and they're also feeling a lot of the shadows, right? And this is the same. Again, I could just roll this back to sexuality as well. You know, like, there's a lot of shadow in sexuality. There's a lot of, like, you know, things that people don't want to come into contact with when they come into the sexuality space. And it's really about pulling ourselves back into our center, you know. And I almost had to laugh when Ben said, yeah, just do an hour a day. It's like, I don't know anyone that can do just an hour a day. Like once you're in there, it's just like, oh, this is so juicy. I just want to be in there all day, you know.
I want to have sex all day. You can't tell me I only can have an hour of sex a day. The same with crypto. Yeah, for sure. And something that I really loved there that you said, Vic, is around like the values, and like rather than it's got to look like this, it's got to be this. How do I speak to my values? And that's something I've seen really important. This my favorite thing so far of being in the circle is this NFT chart that you've created, Ben, around creating the value systems, and how does this speak to this NFT beyond the art or how much money it makes or what the community is like, how does this align with my values? I'd love for you just to share a bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. Look, one of my great skill sets is finding patterns, I would say. You know, in all the businesses and stuff that I've done, it's like I'm a great pattern finder. And when I first came into NFTs, I felt so much chaos. Like it was like, and you're probably all feeling it now, just in this podcast, is like there's so much information flowing. It's like, oh fuck, what do we do? And that's completely normal. Like everyone should know that. I felt that. I still feel that to this day, and that's why it's so fun, because it's like there's all this stuff flowing, and I think just having. So let's talk about NFTs specifically. So you know, you can buy and sell NFTs, right? So there's a couple of things with an NFT. First, we need to find it, right? We need to find the NFT that we want to purchase. Then we need to judge that NFT in a sense. We need to look at some things and decide whether that NFT is going to be a good investment. And then, you know, we pull the trigger. So for me, if you kind of look at my flow, let's say, I will be spending 99% of my time trying to find and then quickly decide about the quality of that NFT, and very little time actually clicking the button, right? It's like, yeah, it's, let's say, principle, strategy, tactic. The tactic is the tiny little piece that everyone wants, but really, if you want to nail the game, it's about learning how to make decisions. So essentially what I did is I built a little scoreboard when I first started doing this stuff to bring order to the chaos of NFT land. And look, I won't go through everything because it'll be a long conversation, but for me, it's thinking about a little bit deeper, because you'd look at an NFT and you might have a square image with a duck on it, let's say, and there's many ducks out there. People say it's like a JPEG zoo in the land of NFTs, but let's say you've got a square image of a duck. Now, a big mistake people would make is they would look at the square image and say, that's a square image. I can right click, save it, which is what many people say, and then I own the thing. But you got to go a little bit deeper, right? You got to peel beneath it. And a good example that I can give you guys with this is I talk about art and essence. And this probably comes from my background of mental health problems. I started to see myself, let's say, like, you've got the body and you've got energy. Art is the same. So you've got the duck, but I want to know what's the essence behind the duck, right? Like what is the idea? Like, what is the feeling that it gives me? And automatically, just by thinking in that way, you're thinking much more deeply about this NFT than 95% of the market. And it puts you in an opportunity to, and you get unconscious at it in a way. It's like, this is the things that I'm thinking about when I'm looking at NFTs. I'm actually searching for that essence. And I might see 100 NFTs, and then one, there's something goes click, and I go, oh, that has essence. And I can't objectify it. I can't often explain it, but I can develop that skill set, if that makes sense. So I usually score it in essence to try and give it something that I can kind of hang on to. So I'll say, okay, does this duck, let's say it scores 10 out of 10 in essence. So, okay, that's something interesting. Paisley, does that help? I'm just giving a couple of things there.
Yeah, especially within our community, essence is a key piece, 100%. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm trying to relate it in that way, but it's like just that one thing. If you take that and go into OpenSea, for example, like as a practice. I love, Vic, what you were saying before about like bringing it into the body. And what I thought about is going into the world of Web3. It is a practice. And you don't have to know everything. It's like yoga, right? Like you get on your mat and you practice. and you get better and better. And this is a practice that everyone can go and maybe try after the podcast. Go onto OpenSea, scroll through, and find 10 NFTs that you believe have essence. And then ask yourself, why do you believe that they have essence? And just that one skill, you do that over a period of time, you put yourself in such a better position. And I think that's something that we could all, just take away.
I would love just, just giving the essence piece is so important, and that speaks very much to the people that will be listening. And I just love, because I think there's maybe like 5 or 7 on your scoreboard, without having to go into deep detail about them, what you are using as a scoreboard. Yeah,
for sure. So I've got the art. So that's the first thing. Then I've got the essence there. Then I've got values. So the next question I'm asking is, can I pull it up on the screen actually? Because I can just just show people.
The only thing will be is that some people will be listening as a thing.
Okay.
But if you want to pull it up, and then anyone that's listening while you're pulling it up, it's on Ben's Twitter. You'll find it there, and also it's both on Vic and I's Instagram for when we put up the tile saying that Ben will be presenting. If you slide across, there'll be the value chart if you want to go look at that while you're listening to Ben explain it on the podcast.
Cool. It'll just take me about 30 seconds to bring it up here. But I can talk through it in the meantime. So we've got, so the art and the essence are the first 2. Then we start to go values. So, and I guess this is something important too. When you're judging an NFT, you want to look at the website, you want to look at the Discord as well, and you want to look at their Twitter. So I'm not just looking at the image, because I want to go a little bit deeper. And the next thing we look at is story. So I want some sort of story with the things that I'm investing in, right? You want to see some, they call it lore, or is there a narrative that's being woven here? Just give me one sec, guys. I'm just gonna pull up this. Here it is. Alrighty.
This is the first. This is an exclusive. We've never had a graph come up on a podcast before. Here we go.
Nice. Okay, so we had the first 3. So the art, the essence, the story. Then look, I've got here my values, right? Because, and this is just something that I've learned personally. All of my best investments have been things that align to my values, and I think the reason for that is you're typically more likely to suffer small losses, or you're typically more in it for the long term, right? Like there's a great project, for example, called Psychedelics Anonymous, and it's done very, very well in the first weeks of launching by an Australian person actually. And I think it's just speaking to a value, and it really connects with the community, and it goes really, really well. So that's an example of that. Now, I would say this is probably the most important one that I'm judging things by, and you have to be very careful in the space around this, is the founders. So the next thing that I'll do is I'll say, okay, who created this project? Now, this is a tricky thing with this space, is you've got people that are what's called doxed, which is like, for example, I'm doxed. We're all doxed in a sense. We are showing our identities. People know who we are. And then you've got a thing called not doxed or undoxed, where people are essentially anonymous creators. And the crazy thing about this Web3 space is probably 50% of the creators are anonymous creators, which is a little bit tricky because it actually can create a lot of scams, because people can create something and then if it doesn't go well, they can take all the funds and then just go and do something else and change their identity. So something that I'm a little bit wary of usually is the founders. I'll be really looking at what has this person done in the past. The thing that I'm judging the project by, let's just go macro. There's 3 things that I really want to know: the quality of the art, the quality of the business person, and the quality of the development, which is the technology. You get a through line between those 3 things, you'll usually be onto a really good project. And essentially this scoreboard is just going like a little bit deeper into that. So this is all what I would say, like we could give it a yin yang charge, perhaps. This is the yin, like the art, the essence, the story, the values, and the founder. That's where it comes from and what it is, let's say. Then we've got the abstract stuff, which is a little bit more tricky to kind of get your claws into. Like this is what we talk about the finance. So we've got scarcity and rarity. How scarce is the asset? How rare is the asset? We've got liquidity, which is how quickly is how sellable is it, right? If I wanted to list it and sell it, could I do that quickly, or is it going to take a long time? Now, something very, very, very important is called future utility. So future utility is essentially like and Atlas was talking about this earlier. Like if I own a token, does that give me a certain right? Can I stake that? Can I earn passive income through that? So there's a really interesting cross section happening now between NFTs and DeFi. They are actually coming together, and a lot of NFTs, you can now stake that to earn tokens in their ecosystem that are then going to plug into, and I know I'm using a lot of language here, but it's important to kind of start to get your head around these terms of their roadmap, right? A good example is the Bored Ape Yacht Club. They're releasing a token. They're going to give you that token that you can then invest into their ecosystem, a lot of gaming ecosystems, those sort of things. So obviously that NFT is going to probably hold better value over time than an NFT that doesn't necessarily have that future utility, if that makes sense. Then we've got the tribe. Now the tribe is, okay, like what's the power of the community? So we could go into the Discord, we could go into the Twitter, we could see what people are saying. We can just capture sentiment. And this is why it's so important to have a Twitter profile and try and capture that. And then the last one is, can I mint, which means like how early can I get in on the project? So essentially what you do is you score each of those out of 10 and it gives you a score out of 100. Is it a perfect system? Absolutely not. Are there more variables? Definitely. But it's just a way to essentially for you to, all this data that's coming in, to process it and put it in little buckets and say, how does that make me feel about the project? And if you're scoring it in some way, or even if you build your own system, I think you're going to be way better off than the masses, let's say.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for that. And just the pure piece that gives me is like looking at things on multiple dimensions. Is like there's in all of this space, as whether that's a Bitcoin, whether that's an NFT, whether that's going into the metaverse, whatever it is there's just so much more than the face value. And with NFTs, that's like the art is the face value. And oh, how does that make money? Why is art this? You know, it's like if you just look at this scoreboard, which obviously isn't the flawless, like everyone agrees upon score, but to me, I was like, okay, cool. I understand so much more about NFTs now. So yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that in.
No worries.
And something that I feel is important, like you mentioned, is the future utility and that people are also attaching metaverses to NFTs now and building towards a future. And I feel like that's something that you are most interested in. Atlas, I would love for you to share a bit about one, like you know, the idea of what the metaverse is, and maybe speaking to what you would feel a lot of the societal collective consciousness and ideal around what it is versus what you see the potential in it and your experiences of it so far.
Sure. I think that the decentralized internet, aka Web3, addresses one of the core injustices in Web2. And that is that all of your work, all your contribution didn't equate to something that satiated your level 1 survival thing of like paying rent, having food, all that kind of thing. And because we put so much in, we put so much content, we edit, we contribute to the value of the community by showing up, answering each other's questions in a peer-to-peer way. And that is all actually acknowledged in a decentralized internet. And essentially comes down to this idea of DID, digital identity or decentralized identity, where you get to be the same character, whatever platform you're using. So imagine you do a bunch of stuff in Facebook and then you go over to Etsy and be like, oh, but I've been really busy over there. Like, can I have a cactus or pottery thing that you're doing? Like, no, what are you talking about? Like, you haven't done anything here. But I think that with a decentralized web, and that's where the metaverse comes in. And just a real quick note on that, I don't think you can have more than one metaverse. Lots of people talk about, oh, the Facebook metaverse versus this metaverse. I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's all about interoperability. It's about all silos, all platforms, all apps, all projects talking to each other. And that's where your unique identifier comes in. So I think that identifier at the moment could be like a MetaMask wallet where, I can plug it into OpenSea, or I can plug it into, Uniswap to trade tokens. I can go here, I can go there. And I don't have to create a new profile in each of these places. I just simply bring along my wallet, I plug it in. It's like, oh, it's you, cool. And then you go on. And so that's something that I think makes sense. And we get this idea of equity in all of these projects. So it's like, oh, I'm part of that project over there. And now can I bring that kudos, that respect and those tokens, those experience points, those unique items like a sword I got in that video game, whatever it is, and those sort of come with me. So I think that's one of the key things about the metaverse, is it addresses the injustice that all of your contribution hasn't been acknowledged up until now. The second part is it's really going to redefine what NFTs are. I don't want to get too ahead of the game, because some people are just getting their head around the fact that an NFT is a collectible bit of art. Like, I don't want to burst the bubble on that. Like, get your head around it first, but that's not really what NFTs are. I think it's art. It's like putting a painting on the side of a truck and going, oh, it's a moving painting. It's like, no, it's a vehicle, but it looks nice, but it actually does something else. So an NFT is really the finite thing in an infinite world. It's the proof of purchase. It's a proof of authorship, saying I can track this thing. It's like if you get a bag of coffee or you get a t-shirt, like, do I know who made this thing? Not necessarily, but with NFTs, I do. I can track its lineage. And I also can have an undeniable proof that I am the one who owns it. So this is going to start to have rank with like political votes and medical records and all that kind of thing. So that's what an NFT is. It's simply non-fungible, which means that it's a unique thing, and it can't, if you trade one for another, it's not the same thing. There's something unique about it. And so for me, the metaverse is going to be, and this is so important now because we spend so much time online. We are dual citizens of the meat space and the pixel space. And a lot of us spend increasingly with lockdowns, your business is online, your social life is online, your creative life, your community, it's like, it's all there. And so that's why I think we want the metaverse, is because I don't want to be in a box. I remember way back at uni researching about interaction design, and a computer could think that we're just an eye and a finger, because that's all it's giving us back, is like a keyboard to tap and our eyes look at the screen. And this comes back to more the embodied ideas, like how can I be a human being and leverage the power of technology, of like the databases and that sort of thing. And that's why I think peripheral devices, whether it be like AR glasses or apps, or things that relate to my real world activity, will start to be plugged in through the Internet of Things. So I don't just have to be sitting on my computer hunched over at a desk to engage in the metaverse. That's why my definition of metaverse actually includes the real world as well. It's the one world where everything can talk to each other. And basically what we're slowly doing is we're starting to replicate natural systems. In the natural system, an atom relates to a planet. Everything is connected. They're not separated. That's just the truth of the matter. And so our technology is starting to replicate that. It's called biomimicry, to mimic life. So that's, for me, what the metaverse is. And the NFTs are going to be like your passport, your driver's license. It's your unique identifier to say it's you. And then all of your activity from any platform in any community is going to start to come with you.
Love it.
Yeah,
That's the best explanation of the metaverse I've ever heard. Well done.
Yeah, I agree. I
Fucking amazing.
agree. Amazing. I would love to also hear, because a lot in the community and people from the outside are a bit worried about, like, we're going to plug further into technology, and we're going to, especially within our community, like because we're people that love nature and we love human touch and eros and creating together in life, where it's a real experience, like a quotations, real experience, where we feel the synergy of one another, and it's not all just within a computer or a phone or a virtual reality, whatever is coming up for others. I'd love to hear your experience so far of playing around in the metaverse and your interactions, Atlas, and what you see the future and how you see balance.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I always come back to universal principles because I think those have the most relevance in most areas. So, and bear with me, it's going to sound a little bit computer geeky, but it hopefully makes sense. So with computers, it's a binary world. Yeah, it's zeros and ones. When you look at the original computers, it was literally just like a switchboard, something going on and off. You can even run a computer on like hydraulics with water sort of rising and falling things. So when you think that is the energy, you can plug it into absolutely anything. Anything that has variation, anything that oscillates can become like a central part of the computer. So when you look at the rise and the fall, like day traders, which are people that sort of buy the dip and then sell at the top, they're making money on the same currency just by timing it correctly. And so when you ask, well, how can we live more of an embodied life? I mean, this is, I guess, something that also comes into the game Vicarious, which you've played with me a few times, which is decentralizing our identities as well. So I'll talk a little bit on that. Is essentially the idea that a decentralized autonomous organization is one that burns the boardroom and it says like, we run this now. And by putting something like a coin or a value based on your votes, you know, people actually care about, because you're layer one, you know, there's something to lose, the skin in the game, and you build more respect in your community. Therefore, people stake more with you. Therefore, you have more power. It's like a natural feedback loop. And this is one of the key things that we don't have, like charities. There's a lot of, you know, scandal around, does your money actually go to the thing? Like if I want to put a well in an African village, does it actually ever get there? Or is there so much corruption and middlemen in the way that it actually never gets there? So through transparency in the metaverse, we have more of a direct ping of the vital sign of anything, whether it be a charity or a technology or anything like that. There's, I think it's called Planet Coin or something like that, based in Miami, where they wanted to improve air quality. Then they had little sensors, and you could have a coin. And if you get the device and you put it outside your house, you're measuring the air quality, and you start to get a currency based on your activity in that space. So that's the kind of thing that I'm excited about, is the fact that any signal can be given value if we can translate it to a function. And, you know, as we've seen by things like Facebook and Google, they're billion blue chip companies because they've got data. Like, and we just, as the user, we just didn't realize how valuable our data was. You know, politics and all these things is all based on data and population information. So because now we know we're actually the batteries of society, we're generating. Imagine, you know, either of you, Vic and Paisley, working in sexual embodiment, imagine you could have like a bio feed to your energy, your orgasmic pleasure, your heart rate, your brain activity, and you could just simply self-pleasure, make love all day, dance, sing, make art, and through that level, that's just like could become its own marketplace of body energy. And then you could get like 10 people to come to your workshop and all their body energy changes, and that's kind of like getting more people into your currency. And so any activity that fluctuates can directly become money in Web3.
You're really getting my entrepreneur brain kicking now. It's like, oh my God, business coming out next week. All right, yep, sold. I'm in for the metaverse. That feels good. Yeah, no, thanks for that. I'm curious to hear where you're sitting with all of this, Vic.
I'm just laughing. Actually, someone a while ago, like in my early days, was saying to me, like, you know, well, just like, how are you going to scale your sexuality? I was just like, and then when I started to hear all these different things that Atlas is talking about, I was like, oh, it's here. It's like, it can all be scaled now, you know, like, so again, very similar to entrepreneur brain in that way. What's coming up for me, and something that I've been really passionate about, what you're talking about, Atlas, is like, you know, things that, you know, as influencers or content creators, we've been putting out into the world. We've been putting them out onto this Web 2 reality, and then they kind of get stunted. So I see it almost like life force energy, right? It's like when I put my life force energy into something, I create something, it kind of can only hit this far, and then there's hit by the algorithm, you know, or it's hit by, you know, censorship, or it's hit by something else. And it's almost like I don't actually have a full gauge of how much my life force energy is impacting the world right now. And actually, this is something that I look at when I'm looking at NFT projects as well. Like, I don't know when I'm going on someone's Instagram profile, whether they really have 100,000 followers, whether their life force energy is really that important to the world that they have 100,000 followers, or if they just pay for that. Whereas there's something about the authenticity of this space that we're coming into, where I know when somebody has built a community of a certain size and they are responding and they're getting back to me. That's actually when I do due diligence on any project, whether that's a coin or an NFT or anything like that. I'm looking at how much that person, how much that community is really interacting with their humans inside of there. When I ask a question, how long does it take them to get back to me? How much do they really care about me as an individual inside of this big pond that they have? So that's one way that I'm really tracking it. And then what I'm excited about is when I bring my life force into the Web3 space, it's almost like it's going to go and touch everything it needs to touch. So it's almost like there's a real excitement for me for when I actually can see a world where life force energy becomes the currency. You know, and that's something that I'm really passionate about, is like when people are vibrating loud enough, when their soul is online that much that it just like the energy just moves into the space. So yeah.
Yeah, that feels really exciting. You know, that's like that's something I'm down for, to become a fad in a way of like, oh, like, you know, how everyone's like, oh, now I've got to get this hat or this shirt or whatever, the newest Nikes. Is like, oh shit, I've got to really do my personal development because it'll actually generate me more money, or like it's actually or practice my sex and orgasm and movement and martial art or whatever it is. It's like, that's actually gonna create wealth for me. That's what I'm here for. If we can monetize our personal development, I'm all the way here for that. And obviously there'll be, you know, positives and negatives to that, the shadows and the absolute like wins. But yeah, I'm all the way here for that.
Yeah, I don't actually think it's going to be personal development in the future. It's just like, because children are going to be so rewarded for their aliveness and whatever makes them come alive, it's like they don't even going to have to personal development to even get that part of their soul out anymore. Like that like, oh, my heart just like, wow, what a world we'll live in when people are just rewarded for being themselves and finding their talents. Like that's their job in life, is to discover what the adventure is for them as an individual. Like that's so beautiful to me.
I think Monsters Inc. did it so well when the monsters were originally collecting screams to power their world, and then they realized that they could harvest giggles and laughter, and it was even more effective. Yeah, similar kind of thing.
Nice.
Love that.
It gives me chills. It gives me chills. I feel like it would be nice to go around and do any final words, final thoughts, and just where everyone can connect to you, and yeah, just share your final pieces. Maybe we'll start off with you, Ben.
Cool. Yeah, you guys could follow me on Twitter. I think that's probably the best and most active place that I am at the moment. So I'm Ben Slater, ETH, Ben Slater ETH on Twitter. So if you want to plug in with me, you can plug in with me there. And yeah, I also run the Circle, which is like more on the investment side right now. So if you're interested in the investing side of NFTs and growing your wealth, that's my sweet spot right there. And I guess one last thing also, because I know that so many people in the community are very creative. A thing to think about too is to start to reverse engineering the creativity that you can bring to the space, you know, because things that I've seen personally in my life are that, and it's interesting what you guys were saying before, because it seems like everyone's going back to all of the ideas that our parents and let's say the boomer generation were saying that that's a bad career choice. Gaming is going massively, music, art, all of these creative things in the next 10, 20, 30 years plus will be such viable industries, you know, and that's what's really exciting. I just wanted to loop that back in and say, the time is now to really create those things and to chase what lights your soul on fire. If it's sexuality, for me, business and investment, or for Atlas, obviously gaming, and like, you know, whatever that is for you, start creating those projects now, because you're going to be so far ahead. And that's just really the last thing that I'd love to say. And yeah, thank you for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
I would like to just indicate the generations in crypto. There was a generation before me, and I think that was really the very technical people, the very trader-based investment sort of people, and obviously those actually making the technologies work. And then now this current generation coming through, I see it to be the community builders, the innovators, and the educators, because we're the people who are going to now make it make sense and give a nice landing pad for people to land into. So if you're not one of those type of people, I would even say don't rush into it. I'd say, connect with someone like Oblivion as a project, or even just wait, like Theta TV, for example. It's a really big network. It's like YouTube. You can watch there, you can trade currencies. You're not innovating, you're not educating, you're not building community, but you're just participating. And that's totally fine. Like it is still a hurdle. And there's good parts of that for people who are there, because there is a barrier to entry, which means it's not going to be mass media just flooding in. That will come. And all that will take is the correct user interface brought out by Apple or Google, where it's literally just a click of the button, big one on your screen, and you're suddenly using crypto. And then there will be billions of people using it. But right now it's not the case. And that barrier to entry actually helps. It's like a protective insulation at the moment. So if you are one of those people, yeah, come on board. If you're not, just use the products that we make. That's the sort of piece I want to understand. And you're not late. And if you're not of that generation of educators and community builders and innovators, that's totally cool. There will be something else for you to do very shortly. And the last piece, just as once again a champion for people to be creative, and I'm not going to go into big detailed things, there could be a lot of a speech about this, but NFT, just take that out of your mind. Just make art, because a painting, a video, a poem, text on a screen, anything can be linked to an NFT. So don't start to limit your creativity, think it has to be technical. You can literally create it with a click of a button on OpenSea called create, and you upload your file and an NFT is made, magic. There's lots of other technical things you can add to it, because it is a programmable unit. But if you're not a coder, just make your art. And then you reach out to myself or Oblivion or anyone else, and we can easily link it to be an NFT, but just do your thing. And it's through innovation. And actually, it's kind of like that hipster movement, where it's more like the analog, the gritty, the human, the sensorial stuff that is going to be the next big movement in NFTs, I think. So yeah, do your thing, and we'll welcome you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Atlas. And where can people connect to you if you, unless you don't want anyone to connect to you?
None. Don't dox me.
Only listen to me on this podcast, and that's it.
No, Atlas Talisman, all one word. Twitter, good place to connect. And also, I can't always help one-on-one. I have a lot of people reaching out to me for guidance and info, so I generally channel them towards Crypto Collective. So yeah, just check that Crypto Collective out. It is on Facebook, but we're more trying to put people towards Twitch, for example. So it's just twitch.tv/Crypto Collective. We've got a Discord, all these things to come, but I'll try and make it simple. So yeah, check out Twitter and
you're going live on those spaces quite often, right? And doing questions and whatnot.
Yeah, I was going at the end of last year, I was going live every day. We're doing a slight juggle where we're going to actually do it just once a week now, but get all of the presenters on in one thing. So I'll be delivering more value and more economic with our time, and also expanding out to TikTok as well. So we'll be FinTokers, as they say, financial TikTokers. We're going to be kicking that off too.
Nice. Vic, do you have anything you'd like to share closing down?
I feel like just the overall thing that I really took away from these guys today is that this is really about staying in your own lane, and staying in your genius. And so I feel like there's a big piece around just actually like just being with the transmission that you're ready to receive, and just like Ben said, just keep absorbing, and like this is the direction that we're going in. So it's just like it's going to keep revealing itself as you keep listening.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's, I feel like, a big piece I want to continue to share is as you would see for myself, like I'm still very much a student. We are all students in this area, but I would definitely say Atlas and Ben have a whole lot more stripes, not only on Ben's shirt, but as a accredited person in the area. And that's what I would say Vic and I's genius is pulling people together to create these conversations and to give education to the people that we believe need to come across, because our community is built of leaders, of experts, of educators, of creatives, etc. And you are the people that are listening right now. And that's the reason why, if you were very particularly like you just into NFT and investments, like go work with Ben, because that's Ben's expert area, and same with Atlas. Like if you're looking to just go straight into gamification of what you're doing, go work with Atlas. And what we are offering right now is Of course, we just want to give free value on this podcast, but then also if you come into Oblivion, these two will be coming in as guest speakers where we can go deeper. Like across this podcast, there's been so many bits where I'm like, oh, I want to go so much more deeper and ask questions that are so layered. But right now, the objective is to just anyone that's still feeling in the space of like, I want in, but I can't fully get my head around it. This is the purpose of here, and there'll be more podcasts, and you can check out Discord where there's more information, and follow these guys on Twitter and get more information. But if you do want to go deeper into Oblivion, you can reach out, and you will have access to epic leaders of their own spaces that have the aliveness of so many different areas. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you to the three of you for joining and yeah, really just expanding myself and everyone else and creating these connections.
Thank you.
Very curious. There. She followed him and soon found herself falling a very deep hole into a strange place called Curious.
Conversation.
Curious.
Conversation.
Nowadays, there are still girls and boys whose curiosity leads them to